popping in to say hi. So hi. I got a question from one of my viewers yesterday, I think. And she was just getting back into oil painting as a hobby. And she was wondering if I was using oils, and if so, what solvent was I using. And that rang alarm bells for me, because solvent is a word, unless I'm cleaning brushes or cleaning oil paint off of something, it's a bit of a nasty word. I'll use thinners, but I won't use solvents. So, okay, oil paint. It has. Its constituents are, on a very, very basic and broad level, pigment, that which makes it the color that it is. Filler, that which allows the paint company to bulk up the tube and charge plenty of money for it without actually using pigment. Mind you, actually there is definitely a purpose for filler as well in certain cases. And then there is a carrying agent. Oil paints, by definition, are oily. That is the carrying agent. That is what the it's an emulsion of pigment, basically at its root of pigment and oil, a mixture of pigment and oil, ground pigment and oil. So what you have is when you're thinning off, like you always want to work lean to fat, right? You start with the lean stuff. You're thinning off that oil a little bit, not much, because if you're using thinners, the thinner itself has a matrix, that which maintains the structural integrity of the chemical composition of the paint. If you use a solvent, by definition, it's dissolving that which holds, that's the matrix. It's dissolving, it's destroying that which maintains the structural integrity of the paint. So solvent's only good for cleaning your brushes, basically. As a result, I don't even need it, because I can use paint thinner to clean brushes. It's fine. So there's a distinction that's a pretty important one. I just wanted to bring that up. I get a lot of questions. What thinners do you use? What mediums do you use? It's a pretty broad question, right? You really need to put that into two different classifications. First one, before you're actually painting in your oil painting, you might be staining the canvas. Okay, I stained this canvas. I used some Varsol paint thinner. Stuff's great. It's fine and it's cheap. And I mixed some burnt sienna in with it, and you know, just stain the whole canvas. Now I'm washing it in. Now I'm outlining. Okay, so now I'm using that same burnt sienna, a little bit of ultramarine blue, and still some of that paint thinner. Not as much. So the viscosity of the viscosity of the paint is a little heavier, it's a little thicker, because I don't want it to be translucent like this stain is. I want it to be opaque, okay, or fairly opaque, and that's why I'm putting in my lines with that. And I have a long ways to go yet on it. You can see it's a little more organized than it was, but anyway, it's on the way. Next, I'm going to put in some general colors. You know, once my lines are in shape, once essentially my drawing is there, I'm going to fill in certain spaces with different colors that will lean more towards the final colors of the painting, of the final painting. When I do that, I'm still going to use only paint thinner, because it's all prep work for the actual painting. But if you use paint thinner and you leave some areas without straight paint on them, the structural integrity of the layer of paint will still be good enough. You don't have to paint over it. If you were to use a solvent, you couldn't do that, because the solvent mixed with paint, it'll turn into powder in no time. It won't adhere properly to the paint that you've got over top of it, and it won't also adhere properly ultimately to the canvas that's behind it. Whether it's linen, whether, it doesn't matter what your grounds are or your backing is. So back to the thinners. Yeah, okay. So I'll wash. In this case, I'm not gonna wash everything in with its general colors, but certain areas I am going to wash in. Again, using thinner and some colors. Then we get to the point of actually painting in. I still plan on making this a knife painting. When I use the knife, you're at the point now you're doing your final painting. I don't use any thinners, and now we're getting to the thinner being a very fat thinner, which would be linseed oil. Linseed oil is the carrying agent of most pigments in most paint, most tubes of paint. There are varieties. If you get to an extremely high-end brand of oil paint, you may even see poppy seed oil, because it has the benefit of practically never yellowing. Linseed oil eventually does yellow a little bit, and there are many others. Not going to get into it. Shh, stop. Not going to get into it. Let's try to keep this simple. I talk too much as it is already. But linseed oil would be something that I would, it's what comes in the tube already, so I could just add more linseed oil to it, and the matrix of that paint will remain strong, even though I'm thinning the pigment off, and the pigment becomes more translucent, which can give a nice effect to the painting. Linseed oil is all I will use. There's other stuff out there for your final painting. Something like liquid, to me, I know linseed oil takes a long time to dry. I think liquid is sort of more of a syrupy texture. Liquid is a brand name. It's not something I would fancy. It dries more quickly than linseed oil. Linseed oil can take a very long time to dry. If you want linseed oil to dry quickly, then you can buy a cobalt dryer. It's just called cobalt dryer, or at least you used to be able to. I don't know if you can now. I imagine you can. And it takes very little of that stuff to mix in with your linseed oil, so that within a day or two your linseed oil is already getting tacky, which is fast for linseed oil. Don't use too much, or you'll end up with paint that's just dries too quickly. That's not good either. Anyway, getting back to the fact that I'm going to use a knife. Once it's all washed in, I'll pick up my knife and I'll start poking into my different places. And I'm just using paint straight out of the tube. I'm not adding any kind of a thinner, no medium, no nothing. Just straight out of the tube. And I like that the best. And frankly, I prefer paint brands that, even though they may not have as high a percentage of pigment as others, if their texture is pasty / buttery, that's my preferred texture for using the knife. Sorry, I'm just going to duck out here for 1 second. Yeah, so with the knife, I don't want runny oils, I don't want syrupy oils, I just want pasty oils, very much like a stucco application. If I'm not going to use a knife and I am going to use a brush, I'm still almost always only going to use paint straight out of the tube. But the viscosity of various colors, different tubes, different companies, manufacturers, some are thicker, some are thinner. That is what's going to dictate how much linseed oil I add to it, if any. Typically, I don't use any. So now we're at the point where I've made the painting using a brush. We're forgetting the knife now because that's decided. No mediums for the knife. Back to the brush. So I've painted the whole thing with a brush now, for example. And there are some areas that I'm sort of happy with, some areas that I'm not. Then I'll take a brush and I'll take my paint. I'll add some linseed oil to it then, because we have very fat, very oily paint now going over paint that is not quite as oily. So we'll have good, really good chemical adhesion as well as mechanical adhesion. And then I'll go to various areas and I might put a stroke in here or there. I might change sort of, a fair size area. But if that's the case, then I can go over that straight paint, painted on the canvas with more straight paint mixed with linseed oil. I can't think of anything else at the moment. Oh, I have actually more recently done the odd knife painting, and because the knife painting is so textured, the only way for me to provide any finesse over that texture was to use a brush. I'll cheat a little bit, I'll use a brush, and then I'll also probably be using a little bit of linseed oil. So that's more of an exception. It's not the rule, it's the exception. Okay, blithering away here. As you can see, still not accomplishing a whole lot, but this is slowly getting organized, I think this is for the most part okay. We need to work on this a little bit, and then I'm going to do the lines back here. So here I am, like every night, doing lines. See you soon, guys.